Hijacker D.B. Cooper, the first break in the only unsolved airplane hijacking in United States history, came on a Columbia River beach.
Most people think D.B. Cooper died in the woods, but the truth is much more disturbing. After 54 years, federal agents have finally confirmed the identity of the world's most famous skyjacker. The FBI found evidence that ties a decorated soldier to the crime of the century. And get this, the breakthrough reveals a pattern of behavior that law enforcement missed for decades.
This is D.B. Cooper's ticket in the name of Dan Cooper. He needed a way to secure the money on his bag.
From the specific rigging of a parachute to a shocking family confession, the mystery is solved. Here is the deal. The man who vanished into the clouds was never really gone. Man who vanished from row 18. It was the day before Thanksgiving in 1971, and the Portland International Airport was humming with the typical holiday rush. People were focused on turkey and family, but one man was focused on a mission that would baffle the world for the next 54 years. He walked up to the Northwest Orient Airlines counter and bought a one-way ticket for Flight 305 heading to Seattle. He used the name Dan Cooper. He looked like any other businessman, dressed in a dark suit, a white shirt, and a black clip-on tie. For starters, nobody suspected that the quiet man sipping a bourbon and water in seat 18C was about to change aviation history forever. Halfway through the 30-minute flight, things took a turn toward the surreal. Cooper handed a note to the flight attendant, Florence Schaffner. At first, she thought he was just another lonely traveler trying to give her his phone number. She slipped it into her pocket without a second thought. But then Cooper leaned in and whispered that she should look at the note because he had an explosive device. When she opened the note, her heart must have dropped. He wanted $200,000 in $20 bills and 4 parachutes. He even showed her the inside of his briefcase, which was filled with red cylinders and wires. It looked terrifyingly real. The pilot, William Scott, was informed immediately. He stayed calm and kept the plane circling for 2 hours while the authorities on the ground scrambled to meet the demands. It was a high-stakes game of chess in the sky. Once the money and the parachutes were delivered at the Seattle-Tacoma airport, Cooper allowed all 36 passengers to leave the plane. He kept a few crew members as hostages and ordered the plane to take off again, heading south toward Mexico. But here is the catch. He told the pilots to fly low at 10,000 feet and to keep the landing gear down. He was setting the stage for a disappearance that would leave the FBI chasing shadows for decades. Somewhere over the rugged terrain of southwestern Washington, in the middle of a heavy rainstorm with winds howling at nearly 200 miles per hour, Cooper did the unthinkable. He lowered the rear stairs of the Boeing 727 and jumped into the freezing night. He was gone, taking the money and his secrets with him. The crew eventually landed safely in Reno, but seat 18C was empty. All he left behind was a black clip-on tie and a few stray hairs. The FBI launched one of the most extensive searches in history, involving hundreds of agents and even the military. But they found nothing. It was as if he had simply dissolved into the pine trees and the mist. As the years turned into decades, the legend of D.B. Cooper grew. He became a folk hero to some and a ghost to others. People wondered if he survived the jump or if he perished in the wilderness. There were still many rumors in the air, but what many could confirm was that the trail had gone cold.
My feeling is he would have been hurt regardless of what he landed into. I think that Cooper most likely crawled to a creek. He didn't have any water supplies, didn't bring any along with him, and he would have had to have water to survive. So I assume he made his way to a little creek and perished there.
The FBI investigated over 1,000 suspects, but none of them fit perfectly. Every lead seemed to end in a brick wall. But then, a discovery in the mud would finally provide the first physical clue that Cooper was more than just a myth. Everything changed when a young boy found a rotted treasure along the banks of a river. Clues buried for 9 years. In February of 1980, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was camping with his family at Tenna Bar, about 9 miles downstream from Vancouver, Washington. While he was raking the sand to build a campfire, he uncovered 3 bundles of cash. They were rotted and damaged by the elements, but the rubber bands were still holding them together. And get this, when the FBI analyzed the bills, they confirmed that the serial numbers matched the ransom money given to D.B. Cooper. It was $5,800 of the original $200,000. This was the first piece of solid evidence found in 9 years, and it set the world on fire again. The discovery at Tennebar raised more questions than it answered. How did the money get there? If Cooper had died in the jump, his body should have been nearby, but searches of the river and the surrounding land turned up nothing. Some experts thought the money might have washed down the Washougal River, while others believed it was planted there to mislead the feds. The FBI used advanced technology to scour the area, but the forest remained silent. It was a massive frustration for law enforcement because they were so close, yet still so far. Nobody expected this to happen, but the money discovery actually made the case even more mysterious. For another 36 years, the FBI kept the case open. They used DNA profiling on the tie and analyzed the handwritten notes, but they could never find a perfect match. In 2016, the Bureau finally announced they were closing the active investigation. They needed to focus their resources on other crimes, and the Cooper case was officially shelved as unsolved. But while the government gave up, a new wave of citizen sleuths and independent investigators took over. They were convinced that the truth was still out there, hidden in old records and forgotten attics. One of those investigators was a pilot with a very specific set of skills. Dan Grider, a commercial pilot with over 24,000 flight hours, became obsessed with the case. He did not just read the files, he recreated the jump scenarios and studied the flight paths with a professional eye. He realized that the FBI might have been looking in the wrong places because they did not fully understand the technical side of the jump. Grider followed a trail of evidence that led him away from the woods of Washington and toward a storage unit in Utah. This is a key detail. He found a piece of equipment that the FBI had been missing for over 50 years. Basically, the breakthrough happened when Grider found something that looked exactly like the gear Cooper had used. Rigging that matches exactly. Inside a dusty storage unit in Utah, Dan Grider found a military-style parachute that looked like it had been frozen in time. It was not just any parachute, it had the same unusual harness clips and reinforced cord loops described in the original FBI files from 1971. The rigging was highly specific, the kind of modifications only an expert skydiver would make. Grider knew that Cooper had requested 4 parachutes and had used 2 of them during his escape. Finding a rig with these exact features in a unit linked to a known suspect was a massive what-on-earth moment for the investigation. The storage unit was tied to the family of Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. For years, McCoy had been a favorite suspect among Cooper enthusiasts, but the FBI had officially ruled him out decades ago. They claimed he did not match the witness descriptions, but Grider was not convinced. He believed that McCoy, a trained military specialist, would have known exactly how to disguise himself. The parachute found in the storage unit was the smoking gun Grider needed. It proved that McCoy had access to the exact type of equipment used in the hijacking. And that's putting it lightly, because the similarities between McCoy and Cooper were starting to become undeniable. Richard McCoy was not just a random person, he was a man with a very dangerous set of skills. He was a veteran of the Vietnam War who had served as a helicopter pilot and a demolition expert. He knew explosives, he knew flight paths, and he was an expert skydiver. 5 months after the Cooper hijacking, McCoy pulled off a nearly identical stunt. He hijacked a United Airlines flight in Denver, demanded $500,000, and jumped out of the back of a Boeing 727. He was caught and sentenced to 45 years in prison, but he eventually escaped by crashing a garbage truck through the prison gates. The FBI had always called McCoy a copycat, but Grider's discovery suggested something much more disturbing. If McCoy had the parachute from the original hijacking, then he was not a copycat. He was the original. The rig in the storage unit was the physical link that tied the 2 crimes together. It was a breakthrough that no one saw coming, and it forced people to look at the McCoy family in a whole new light. They had been living with these secrets for over 5 decades, and the pressure was finally starting to show. So, here's the deal. The parachute was just the beginning of a much larger confession. Soldier behind the mask. Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. was a man who lived a double life that seemed like it was pulled from a movie script. To his neighbors in Provo, Utah, he was a devout Mormon and a family man who was studying for a law degree. But beneath that calm exterior was a man who craved the adrenaline of the mission. His experience in the Vietnam War had left him with a unique set of skills that made him the perfect candidate for a high-altitude heist. He was a decorated hero who had been awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, yet he found himself struggling to provide for his family on a student's budget. When McCoy hijacked the plane in April of 1972, he used a fake grenade and a pistol. He was much more aggressive than Cooper had been, which is one reason the FBI thought they were different people. But get this, the strategy was identical. He knew the weak points of the Boeing 727, and he knew exactly when to jump to avoid detection. When he was eventually tracked down, the FBI found over $499,000 of the ransom money hidden in his house. He was a man who was clearly capable of planning and executing a complex crime. The crazy part is what happened after he was sent to prison. McCoy was not the type of person to sit behind bars. He used his military training to plan a daring escape. He and a few other inmates fashioned a fake handgun out of dental acrylic and managed to seize control of a garbage truck. They drove it right through the prison fence and vanished. McCoy spent several months on the run before he had a final, fatal encounter with FBI agents in 1974. He died in a shootout, taking his secrets with him to the grave. Or so everyone thought. For 54 years, the McCoy family stayed silent. They watched the documentaries and read the books about D.B. Cooper, knowing all along that the face in the sketches looked a lot like the man who sat at their dinner table. They kept his belongings tucked away in closets and storage units, perhaps hoping the world would eventually forget. But the investigation by Dan Grider brought the past back to the present. The parachute and the documents found in Utah were too much to ignore, and the family finally reached a breaking point. Hands down, the most chilling part of this story is what the children finally decided to say. Solving America's greatest mystery. The silence finally broke when Richard McCoy's children, Rick and Chant, decided to speak to Dan Grider. They had spent their lives under the shadow of their father's legacy, and the weight of the secret had become too much to bear. In a series of emotional conversations, they confirmed what many had suspected for years.
The deepest family secret was that Daddy was D.B. Cooper. My brother and I wish formally apologize to those hurt or affected by the hijackings of Northwest 305 and United 855.
They admitted that they believed their father was indeed D.B. Cooper. They spoke about the strange behavior he exhibited and the items he kept hidden from the world. It was a confession that turned a cold case into a closed chapter. Rick McCoy III explained that they never wanted to believe their father was a criminal, but the evidence was overwhelming. They had seen the parachute and they knew about his military background. They realized that their father's hijacking in 1972 was not a copycat move, but a return to a plan he had already mastered. They chose to speak out now after their mother had passed away to ensure that she was never legally implicated in his crimes. It was a move toward peace and a way to finally let the truth breathe. The FBI has since taken the evidence from Grider's investigation into account. While they have not officially updated their public files to name McCoy as Cooper, the internal consensus has shifted significantly. The combination of the modified parachute, the military background, the identical hijacking method, and the family confession makes it the most compelling solution to the mystery. It is a disturbing realization that a war hero and a family man could also be the most elusive criminal in American history. It shows that the people we think we know often have shadows we cannot even imagine. Does knowing the identity of D.B. Cooper change how you feel about the legend, or was the mystery more exciting than the truth? It is wild to think a war hero was behind it all. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please like and subscribe for more investigative stories.